Again, the restaurant in the Blue Roof building is the Surf Rider Restaurant. If you go back in the office, across from where you picked up your guide as we go around this historic harbor. Now, I am not a historian, but I will tell you some stories about history, but I promise you I will not give you a big test at the end of the trip. So you see behind that group of trees there is a round building with a green roof. This houses the Hampton Carousel. It's a 1920s era carousel or merry-go-round. Just a short walking distance from the hotel right over to the carousel there. This formerly operated out of Buckrow Beach Amusement Park. When they closed the park in the 1980s, the carousel was disassembled, returned to Ohio for restoration and repair. All 48 horses and 2 chariots were restored, returned here, installed inside of that round building, and you can see the lights in it, and it is operating now great. So it's just a short walk over. For a buck or so, you can take a ride on an antique carousel. $1 million facility is dedicated to the history of flight and space, as supported here in the area by agencies like NASA Langley. All of our Mercury astronauts receive training there. We also have NASA Wallops Island on the eastern shore, mid-range rocket launch and test site, as well as Langley Air Force Base Seafood Processing Center. This is a multi-generational family business. The Amerys have run this operation for 4 decades or more. Fishing trawlers like you see here will spend 3 to 6 weeks at sea, return with their catch, offload either fish, scallop, or crabs. Amerys will then process it, package it, load it into the tractor-trailer trucks like you see there on the dock, and deliver it all around the world. Now, unfortunately, Amerys is a wholesale business. In other words, if you want to buy seafood from Amerys, you usually have to buy a whole truckful of it. We're still about 15 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. We still experience about a 2.5 to 3 foot tide change here on the Hampton River. What this means is all the water that we'll be cruising on today is salt water. Now, this was a very important fact in the year 1607, when the very first English settlers arrived to settle the New World here in Virginia. Captains Christopher Newport, John Smith, their 3 small boats, Susan, Constance, Godspeed, and Discovery. After their long voyage across the North Atlantic, their first job was to find fresh food and water. After a quick stop at Old Point Comfort, they sailed into here. Realizing that this was still salt water, they turned around, sailed out into the harbor like we're headed right now, made a right turn, sailed over to the next river, and 23 miles up that river, they finally experienced fresh water, so they established Jamestown. 2 years later, Captain Newport returns again with another ship full of settlers and supplies, again stopping at Old Point Comfort, where he established an outpost for Jamestown, which he called Fort Algernon. The following year, 1610, the city of Hampton was formed, and today, folks, as you drive around our fair city, as they say, the rest is history. School was started shortly after our American Civil War, when General Samuel Chapman Armstrong convinced the American Missionary Society to purchase the then Little Scotland plantation for the purposes of starting a school for freedmen and Native Americans. The first classes were held on the opposite side of the campus under a large oak tree that, by the way, has become known as the Emancipation Oak. It was where the Emancipation Proclamation were read to freed slaves in the area. The first classes there had 2 instructors. Behind the trees coming up next, the big magnolia trees there, you see a white structure. This is the original manor house of the Little Scotland plantation. You can see it behind those large trees there. This is now the residence of the president of the university, Dr. Harvey. Hampton University History Museum. If you'd like more information about the school, I would highly recommend that. It even has a portion of our national cemetery is on campus as well. traffic, the British governor, Alexander Spotswood, established the customs house for the purpose of collecting a tariff or a tax on all the ships coming and going. Well, as a result of this tariff, Governor Spotswood was living very well in Virginia. Thank you very much for asking. But there was a problem that bothered him. These pirates would interfere with his gig here. So he hired 2 ships of British Marines to eliminate the problem. Now, they leave here across the harbor into the Atlantic, turn south, looking for Edward Teach. Now, he didn't operate as Eddie the Pirate. That didn't scare anybody. He traded as Blackbeard the Pirate and really was feared all along the East Coast. Captain Maynard and his crews caught up with Blackbeard off the coast of the Carolinas in the early 1700s. After an all-day battle, 4 Marines and 9 pirates were dead. The 10th pirate to die was Blackbeard himself. They found him, Lieutenant Maynard found him stretched out and raising his pistol for one last musket shot before he expired. He found him with 5 musket shot wounds and 20 stab wounds. Eddie was a tough dude, and you might say he stuck it out till the end. Well, anyway, now that's an old English term for a large open area suitable for anchorage, which it certainly was during its heyday. Dozens of ships would be anchored out here waiting to offload their goods into surrounding ports. Well, you won't hear anybody today say, I live in the Earl of Southampton Road set. They just say, I live in Hampton Roads. Well, trust me, nobody lives in the middle of this 10.5 mile long, 5.5 mile wide harbor. When they say I live in Hampton Roads, they're talking about the communities that surround the harbor. For example, on what's called the Virginia Peninsula, the major communities are Newport News and Hampton on the tip of the peninsula. And further up is Yorktown and Williamsburg. Across the harbor, on what's called the south side, we have Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, and Suffolk. These are the major communities that make up what's typically called Hampton Roads. And that equates to about, I think we're getting close to 2 million people. Looking off to the starboard side past those barges of rock, another tunnel, you go across that is the James River, and then directly in front of us where the Navy base is the Elizabeth River, Nansemond River, and Pagan River. These 5 rivers empty into this natural harbor. It then empties out across the upcoming Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel complex into the lower portion of the famous Chesapeake Bay. Not a lot of activity out here right now. I see a tugboat pushing one of those barges of rock in. All of that's going over for the new construction on the bridge tunnel. I'll talk about that later. There's also a large bulk cargo ship that's anchored over here, sitting pretty high in the water, indicating westbound traffic. The westbound tunnel, as the population grew, moved more travel tunnels, or travel lanes were required, so they built a parallel tunnel, the eastbound tunnel, and now completed in the 1970s. Now we have 2 lanes of traffic going east and 1 tunnel, 2 lanes going west. Watch that big truck. As it comes onto the island, it immediately descends into the tunnel. It will go down 105 feet to the very bottom of the harbor, then proceed underwater 1 1/8 mile to the island on the opposite south side there, where you see all the construction cranes over there preparing for the new tunnels. This 1 1/8 mile distance makes it the 4th largest bridge tunnel in North America. Buildings with the garage doors on it house emergency vehicles that can remove damaged, disabled cars, flat tire, oil and gas, fender benders, etc. Again, these barges are loading rock and sand. This conveyor belt, that barge was full of sand. They load it with that big backhoe into that hopper, pumps it out to the island there, and you can see coming up where all of this sand is being spread out by the bulldozers there on the island. This one is unloading rock, to also to expand the island there. The large buildings on the tunnel complex house ventilation fans, huge fans that provide fresh air to the tunnel and extract the exhaust from the vehicles. All part of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel expansion project. People ask me what I do. I say I work on a boat. Let me tell you, folks, there's working on a boat, and then there's working on a boat. I'm going to stay here. I'm too old to mess with all those rocks. Where the color of the rocks changed past that second pole there, they're expanding that island all the way out here. They filled in the rock and the dirt so far, and they're working their way down. Another important factor, the 15th, 2011, Fort Monroe was the oldest continuously operating military base in the United States. However, our BRAC Commission, Base Realignment and Closure Commission, decided it was time to retire the fort. A ceremony was held, the flag was lowered, the property turned over to the Fort Monroe Authority, a portion to the city of Hampton, and a portion to our national park system. So a portion of the fort is now a national park monument. Hopefully one day we can have full national park status. Others controlled by the Fort Monroe Authority and the city of Hampton. As a military base, it was the headquarters for the Army's Training and Doctrine Command, a major Army command commanded by a 4-star general that when the fort closed, headquarters Tradoc was moved up the peninsula to Fort Eustis, and it is operational there. The large building you see is the Chamberlain. This operated many years as a hotel on a private hotel on a military base. However, after it closed, around in 2008, when the economy took a dive, the revenue went down, the owners were forced to close. It sat vacant for a couple of years, and then another group bought the Chamberlain, converted the rooms to apartments, and it is now the Chamberlain Independent Living Community for seniors. So if you're looking for a place in your golden years, you might want to check out the Chamberlain. Just bring some gold. Seems like the older I get, more places like this come. Beautiful, beautiful facility there. In fact, they have 2 restaurants. They're open to the public. You can call and make reservations and have dinner with the residents and also get a tour if you're interested. The gazebo was the site of many military ceremonies when this was an Army base, retirements, promotions, change of command, etc. The homes you see on the waterfront were the residence of the commanding officers. The one with the large columns on it was the 4-star general who lived there. These facilities and other homes like it on the back part of the base are now available through the Fort Monroe Authority for lease if you would like to live in quarters like these on a former Army base. You can check with the Fort Monroe Authority and see what they have available. Seawall you see there on the opposite side of that is a walkway that runs from the Chamberlain down to the corner, turns, and all the way down the face of the Fort Monroe there for about 7 miles. So if you'd like to come over to Fort Monroe, take a walk along, you can stand and look at the view, you can walk, you can jog, you can bicycle, you can crawl, or like I said, you can just stop and look. Beneath the flag, you can see the flag there is the wall of Fortress Monroe. This is the oldest of the stone forts built in the 1800s and the only one that is completely surrounded by a moat from the fence with the ivy on it over to the wall of the fort. It's about an 18-foot wide moat filled with water surrounding the star-shaped fort. On top of the fort where the flagpole is, self-guided walking tour all the way around the top. Also inside the fort where you see the windows where cannons would be placed to fire out into the harbor were casemates is the Casemate Museum. Now each room is set up in the museum to predict a different period of the fort. Fort Algernon all the way until the closure in Fort, is Uncle Jim fishing? light's red, stop, because it's only wide enough for one car. In fact, it was built for wagons back in the 1800s. If it's red, stop, because there's probably a car coming through from the other way. When the light turns green, you can go through, unless you're in an RV or an extra high vehicle. I would not suggest going into the fort. Even if you've got a big SUV or a big pickup truck, be very careful of your mirrors if you go through there, because it's not very wide. But once you're inside, there's a one-way street, you turn right. That very first building there is quarters number 1. That's where President Abraham Lincoln stayed when he visited the fort during the Civil War. As you drive around, you come past the parade grounds, other buildings inside, the Casemate Museum, the Chapel of the Centurion, and the entrance up to the top of the fort for the walkway. Seawall here, there used to be housing, fourplexes, where military soldiers would live when it was a army base, and Hurricane Elizabeth kind of reached that, flooded the buildings, and they had to be destroyed. Heads up kind of northwest. It's fed by hundreds of rivers and streams. It's one of North America. It is North America's largest estuary or habitat for all types of life and sea life. Also down past the beach club is, on the opposite side, is a mobile home or motorhome park, Colonies RV Park. It's a small park, but it's really nice if you have an RV. Now the first two original tunnels we just crossed back over were constructed by digging a trench and then floating in 104-foot long sections of the tunnel, sealed off, sinking them into that trench, covering them with dirt, put the next one in, weld them together. That's how they're built. So when you go through the current tunnel, you're not only going 105 feet down, but you're under 60 feet of water and 50 feet of dirt in the front. The new tunnels, however, are going to be built differently. They're based there, that's Chambers Field. You may see helicopters land and take off from there, or aircraft landing and taking off as well as we approach the Navy base. It's going to take us a few minutes to get over there, so sit back, enjoy your ride. I'll take a little break. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those questions as well. And as we get closer to the base, I'll pick up and give you all the information on the base as we go past it. Also, one up here has a red flag with a diagonal on it, indicating they have divers in the water. There are also red buoys out there. It's always part of this strange structure you see in the water there. Those tubes coming down under that canister are actual cables that go under the water at different intervals all along here. It's part of the Navy's degaussing or deperming system. Anytime one of our metal-hulled naval ships spend a long period of time at sea, the interaction of the salt water along the hull of the ship can cause the hull to become magnetized. Well, that's not a good thing. If you're in an enemy port somewhere, they have underwater mines that can be drawn up against the hull and explode. It can also interfere with the electronics on the ship. So when our ships return from a long period of time at sea, they'll do what we call run the range. Those yellow signs you see there, they'll come across those cables, and that red and white tower that's right at the first of the Navy base there has all the electronic equipment in there that can measure the degree of magnitude or magnification of the hull of the ship. Yeah, there you go. Sometimes I quit listening to myself and say funny things. Anyway, if they are out of tolerance, the operator will say, "Sir, you're above tolerance," and direct them to the degaussing station up in Portsmouth. They'll pull into the dock there, and I think what they do is they take cables underneath the hull of the ship at different intervals all the way along the length of the ship, and they apply current through it and then reverse it back and forth until it demagnetizes to the hull of the ship. So that's what all that operation is. Looks like these divers are doing some work on one of those cables there. The red flag indicates the other vessels to stay away from them because they got divers there. That you see, that large building on the base coming up there in front of the ships, that's a 7-story building. So that gives you an idea to compare the size of these ships to that 7-story building. Sometimes you know, when they're all lined up, you say, oh look, that's just another boat. But that gives you some perspective there to the size of these large ships. CC helicopter. Okay, the first vessel we see here at the Navy base, this is a San Antonio class amphibious assault ship. The purpose of this ship is to deliver Marines and soldiers to an area of conflict and then transfer them from the shore from the ship onto the shore so they can conduct their operations. This is the flat panels you see on the side of this. This is our newest class of amphibious assault ship. And all of that design, the back panel, the outside stacks, all of that is part of its stealth design, designed to return a smaller radar signal to any enemy radar. The hangar door you see up on the top can house helicopters. That flight deck can accommodate all types of helicopters as well as MV-22 tilt rotor aircraft. They have the big wing they can tilt up, take off like a helicopter. There comes some more helicopters. Fly like an airplane. There's a couple of more security boats here heading out. Maybe these boats. This ship is number 19. This is the USS Mesa Verde. Notice on the stern of that ship, it looks like a tailgate that's partially open. They can drop that down into the water and then flood the back third of that ship with up to 6 feet of water. And landing craft the size of our vessel or bigger can drive right into the stern of that ship, kind of like a floating garage for ships. It can also accommodate the LCACs, landing craft, air cushion hovercraft that the Navy operates as well. Again, this is number 19, the USS Mesa Verde. As a matter of fact, if that hangar door was down, you would see a drawing on it. It's their motto. They're called Ghost Gators. Now, Ghost because of the stealth design on the ship. Gators because that's something pretty mean in the water. So I guess that's where they got their mascot or their name from. Ships the size of the Mesa Verde can carry approximately 700 Marines and all of their equipment to an area of operation and transfer them from the ship onto shore so they can do their job there. Past the Navy base, don't everybody over here jump up and run over here because that doesn't work good on that. We're going to go down, turn around, come back, so both sides will be able to take plenty of pictures of the ship. Notice the two tugboats coming in here. These are actual private commercial tugboats. from the Moran Tugboat Corporation out of Wilmington, Delaware. They contract to the Navy to assist them in moving their ships and barges and equipment around the harbor, getting them secured to the docks, pulling them in when they kind of pulling them out into the channel to get them underway when the time comes. 196 is a Henry J. Kaiser class underway replenishment ship. So just two different classes of the same type of supply ship. The number 5, the Robert Peary, is a newer class. It's larger. The purpose of these ships is to resupply our fleet when they're at sea. They'll pull up alongside of the ship as they're set the same speed, so both ships are going through the water at the same speed, say 14 knots or whatever. They'll then pass those black hoses over to the ship to be resupplied, begin to pump fuel, oil, and potable water to resupply the ship. They can also string lines, ropes between the two ships, transfer dry goods and cargo nets to resupply the ship underway. Notice the blue and gold stripe on these ships. This indicates that they're operated by the Military Sea Lift Command and are manned primarily by civilians and are basically unarmed, I believe. Number 5 is the Lewis and Clark class. It is the Robert Peary. And number 196 is the USNS Kanawha. And that wasn't here yesterday either. On the opposite side of the pier is another underway replenishment. I'll give you the name of that. It's on the opposite side of Pier 8. And there's another white ship there. We saw that one come in yesterday. You can just see the blue and gold stripe on it, indicating it's also operated by Military Sea Lift Command. This is some kind of electronic surveillance ship. It's got all the radar stuff on it, used to track missiles or anything else going on. Maybe, like launches down at Cape Canaveral or something, I don't know. And that's the Heezen or something like that we saw come in yesterday. The white ship is the Heezen, some kind of electronic surveillance ship. I still haven't seen the number on the one behind it, but coming up, the large ship number 3. This is a Wasp class amphibious assault ship. Same purpose as the Mesa Verde back there, only it's older and bigger. They can accommodate up to 900 Marines and all of their equipment. Also has the stern docking well. Has the flight deck, but cannot accommodate the F-18 fighter jets because it doesn't have the catapults. But it can accommodate de-stalled aircraft like very short takeoff and landing aircraft, like the Harrier jump jet, the MD-22 Osprey, and other aircraft. The Henry J. Kaiser there is the Walter Diehl. Number 3 is the Kearsarge. Now, anytime we put our Marines or soldiers into combat, we have to expect casualties. And as such, ships like the Kearsarge here, Wasp class, have 3 fully functional operating rooms on board this ship. They have nurses, doctors, and staff available to treat any wounded that may be brought back to the ship. In fact, that ship has space for up to a 500-bed hospital if needed. In addition to supporting our troops when they're in combat, they also conduct humanitarian exercises when there's a hurricane or a and also distribute food and water as required using their generators to provide power. It's number 3, the USS Kearsarge. On the opposite side of Pier 7, further back, we have an Arleigh class guided missile destroyer. As we pass past the end of Pier 7 here, you look down, you'll see it there. This is number 79. That would be the USS Oscar Austin. Coming up at the next pier, number 24, is another San Antonio class. This is the Arlington. You can see that stern docking well gate is down and the helicopter hangar gate is open on that. Now the purpose of our guided missile destroyers like number 79 and some of the cruisers that we'll see later is threefold. They're anti-aircraft, anti-surface ship, and anti-submarine. What that means is if you're a bad guy where our fleet's operating, you're in big trouble. Notice those octagonal shields on the superstructure there. That's a stationary, phased-array radar screen that works in conjunction with the flying E-2C Hawkeye. It has the big radar dome on it. That aircraft is up anytime our fleet is out. And that weapon or radar system can track and sort out friendly or foe up to 500 targets within a 400-mile range of where we're operating. If an enemy target is the Arleigh destroyers like number 79, number 66, or that's 74 from McFaul, and further in is the, can you read that one? Looks like the Forrest Sherman. Yeah, it is, 98 Forrest Sherman. The destroyers like these can carry 90 Tomahawk cruise missiles and Burke missile cells. They launch them right out of the ship, the deck of the ship. They also carry helicopters. You can see on the Forrest Sherman, 2 of the helicopter hangar doors are open there. And on the bow of these ships is a 5-inch gun like you see on number 61 back there, the Ramage, for its own protection. These Arleigh class guided vessel destroyers are the fastest warships in the world. That's interesting. They got the cover off of the main gun on the bow there. I've never seen that before. It must be doing some, well, yeah, I see some workers there. Just don't test it right yet. Now, I've never seen it with the protective cover off of it. Another helicopter passing. Okay, number 87 is tied up at Pier 4. Pier 3 is our submarine pier. If you look along the side of that pier where that big crane is, about that area, further back you see the black hull of one of our submarines there. It's got an orange boom around the water of the hull, and then the sail tower has scaffolding on the sail tower. Typically we have Los Angeles class submarines or the new Virginia class submarines that are built right across the harbor here in Newport News Shipbuilding that are tied up here at Pier 3. The Los Angeles class submarines are 360 feet long, 30 feet wide, powered by one nuclear reactor. They have missiles, torpedoes, and other weapons, and are crewed with up to 130 officers and sailors. And I tell you, they're packed in there a little tighter than on the aircraft there. We also have another submarine out towards the end of the pier here on the opposite side. They have some of the missile hatches open on the front. Interesting thing about that, on the Virginia class, one of the difference between the Los Angeles class and the Virginia class, and I believe that's the Virginia class, the size of the cell that they launched the missiles out of. On the Virginia class, they're just the right size for the cruise missiles. On the Los Angeles class, on the Virginia class, they're bigger, kind of like a revolver, like a 38. Notice there are no names or numbers on these submarines, so I cannot tell you what the name of that submarine is. Yes, once they leave here and go down, it needs a number anyway. Nobody can read it in addition. The next pier coming up, we have a guided missile cruiser. The one on this side of the pier is number 66, the USS Way City. The opposite side is the USS Anzio. The purpose of these cruisers is the same as the destroyers. They're just older and bigger. They can carry up to 120 cruise missiles up their slope. We have one last destroyer here on the end of Pier 2. And that is the USS, that's the number 81, the USS Winston Churchill. Our only destroyer named after a foreign dignitary. The white ship you see with the red crosses on it is two of our hospital ships. This is the USNS Naval Hospital Ship Comfort. The other one is the Mercy, stationed on the west coast. These are actually converted tankers. They're converted to make this a hospital ship. They have 12 fully functional operating rooms on board. They also have bed space for up to a 900-bed hospital on board this, with doctors, nurses, and crew available to assist anyone who needs it. Now, you might recognize this from back last April. Comfort left its home port here, went up to New York, and was docked up there during the Corona pandemic and providing care there. When it finished the task up there, it came back here and began to resupply for its next deployment. Number 188 is the Josiah Humphreys, another Henry J. Kaiser. Behind that, I can't recognize that ship. I think maybe that's a cable layer, and if it is, it's the USNS white ship behind number 81. The last ship here in the Navy base with the red, white, and blue stripe on it is a reserve vessel. This is a supply ship. That strange-looking device on the end can be dropped down into the water. A fully loaded barge pulled into that, pulled forward into the storage area. This ship can carry 32 barges loaded with equipment for our Marines and soldiers. We have some kind of commercial ship here making its way out. Okay, we're turned around here in the international terminals. Container ships will come in here loaded with containers and offload some of those boxes you see on shore, pick up some more, and then head on up or down the East Coast as they make their way up. Almost anything you buy these days, one time or other, was transported in one of those shipping containers. Now, as we make our way back down the Navy base, I won't tell you the names of the ships again, but I can tell you some stories about some of these Virginia-class submarines who actually fire a missile to have an actual target. How many remember our ship that was attacked in Yemen in 2000, the USS Cole? A small boat the size of the destroyers you see here. Small boat drove up to the side of it, put a 40-foot hole in it, killed 17 of our sailors. That ship, the size of these ships, was lifted onto a heavy lift ship, returned to Mississippi, repaired, put back into service, USS Cold is home ported here. In fact, it was in Pier 4 just last week. How many of you saw the movie Captain Phillips? The Burke, Alabama captain that was captured by Somali pirates. He was held in an orange lifeboat similar to the ones we've seen on the side of some of these ships. 3 pirates kept him in that lifeboat for a couple of days, and it wasn't until from the top of the hangar deck, like those 2 hangars that are open on the ship back there, the Forrest Sherman, 3 Navy SEAL snipers fired 3 shots into that lifeboat, eliminating the 3 pirates. They then rescued Captain Phillips in a small boat, brought him back to the destroyer, gave him the medical attention he needed, and then returned him safely to the United States, right here in Norfolk. Sister ship to the one back there, that's number 98, the Forrest Sherman. The ship that conducted that operation was number 96, the USS Bainbridge, and it was in port last week as well. When I tell the story of the Bainbridge, I also like to mention that that's the second time that somebody from Hampton Roads told pirates not to mess with us, and I think they were very effective this time as well. You haven't seen any pirates attacking our USS Arlington. This class of ship is so new, and three of these ships are named in memory of the folks that died during the attacks on 9/11. Ship number 21 is the USS New York. It actually has steel that was recovered from the wreckage of the trade towers built into the bow of that ship. It looks just like this, but it's called the New York in memory of those 3,000 folks who died when the towers came down. This ship right here, number 24, is the USS Arlington. It's named in memory of the 86 folks that died when the plane flew into the Pentagon, which is in Arlington, Virginia. As a matter of fact, if that hangar door was down, you would see a diagram, a blue diagram of the Pentagon, and one side of that is painted red in memory of the folks that died during that attack. Ship number 25 is the USS Somerset, and it's named in memory of the folks on Flight 93 that overcame the terrorists and crash landed in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. So 3 of those ships, the New York, the Arlington right there, and the Somerset, are named in memories of the folks that died during those attacks. I talk about a lot of different history on here, early American history and all that, but when we come past the Navy base, and I tell you the stories of these ships and where they're protecting our interests all around the world, it's pretty obvious. Vessels in here, foreign vessels, and I never recognized them. In fact, when we first started up in April, there was an Italian aircraft carrier here. Its motto was, "It's a big boat." No, never did that. But we were doing yellow flag flying on it. So I walked over to the teacher. I said, "Well, ma'am, you seem to be in the flags. Can you tell me what that red and yellow flag means?" She looks at us, well,
yeah, I was in the CAMI building, the Civil Aerospace Medical Institute.
Typically, our aircraft carriers are at these ports. Last week we had 2 aircraft carriers here, number 75, an Nimitz class Truman, Harry S. Truman, and number 78, the Gerald R. Ford, our newest aircraft carrier. All of them are built right across the harbor there where you see those 2 horizontal blue cranes. They're on the James River. You're looking across the tip of the peninsula there towards that. It's a matter of a single building, then a crane, and then what looks like a big telephone pole. That's actually the mast of one of the aircraft carriers over there. And there's currently 4 over there. They're building the number 70, which will be number 79, the next carrier in the Ford class. The it will be the USS John F. Kennedy. They're also number 73, the George Washington is completing its midlife refueling and refitting. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have to fill up my wife's minivan every week. These nuclear-powered aircraft carriers only have to be refueled every 25 years. Now, it's a little bit expensive, more expensive than filling up a minivan. They'll pull the carrier over there, they'll remove the spent fuel rods, put new fuel rods in, they'll upgrade electronics and other systems that have changed, and I'm sure they go through 15 to 20 gallons of gray paint, maybe a whole lot more. It takes about 2.5 years to complete this. The George Washington is in the end of that cycle. Number 74, the USS Stennis has moved over there. It was over here a couple of weeks ago. They just moved it across, and it will begin its 2.5 to 3 year cycle over there. Still doing certification and training for different equipment on the thing in preparation for its first deployment, probably late 2022 or early 2023. The long horizontal structure you see there on the end of Newport News Point is the Newport News coal terminal. Coal trains will bring hundreds of cars of coal in there, and then those conveyor belts will load it onto ships and then the coal colliers and deliver it all around the world. Heidi's over I-1. He goes down below, puts on his fancy Confederate uniform, comes out onto the bow of the Virginia, expecting to receive a gentlemanly surrender just like he taught him. Well, that's when his luck changed, because somebody on the shoreline over there fired a musket at him, hit him in the hip, and wounded him. It infuriated Buchanan. He was so mad. Are these barbarians? Don't they understand the proper procedures for conducting an at-sea surrender? He was so mad. He called for a musket from down below and started shooting back at the dude. Well, to end an already long story, they can't get any closer. The captain's wounded. The crew's hot and tired. They're running out of ammunition and fuel, so they decide to go back to Sewell's Point, get food and rent-style ships, smaller, flat deck, round turret, about 10-foot round turret in the middle of it with 2 cannons at 180 degrees. But it also had a steam engine with gears around the bottom of that turret, so the whole round turret would swivel. Those 2 cannons could shoot in any direction. They didn't have to be broadside. Very innovative for that time period. Everything covered in iron. Arriving about 8 p.m., it's immediately dispatched over to Newport News Point to finish off the job it started the day before. And one of the great things they did last year, or the year before, is they reduced their $12 admission fee to $1 per person. And I could just spend hours in the section just on Again, the restaurant in the Blue Roof building is the Surf Rider restaurant. If you go back in the office across from where you picked up your tickets, there's a pad of maps on that counter that lists all the restaurants and their addresses. You can pull that off and use your GPS to go wherever you'd like to go. But it's got most of the restaurants in Hampton listed on there.